Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalition's Warrior Wednesday. Today on this episode, we have with us Jason Polinski from 3D Response Systems. So I'm sure everybody out there knows exactly what that is, and we can delve right into the conversation. Or maybe what we should do is have an expert explain to us why we're failing to protect our children, why we're failing to protect our school staff, and what it is that we can do to do a much better job of that. Why don't you walk us through the basics here?
Well, it's to keep it simple. It's we're not providing the tools for the kids, the teachers, and the cops to protect our children in schools.
Okay, so specifically, there's a lot of people out there that have an idea that their school is just fine, or their school is at least adequate because they see some signage and some other practices or whatever else. So why don't you tell us what it is you think, because you and I will probably agree on most of this, what it is you think that we think that we're doing that are actually false senses of security. So I think we need to flesh that out. Why don't you walk us through that?
So you can take a list of what the one thing we have not defined is what school security or safety is. We defined everything else in society, whether it be car safety, fire safety, airplane safety, water safety. They all have a definition. This topic, everybody is an expert in, and everybody who is in a leadership position in education believes that what they have is actual security or safety. Some of those examples are camera systems. As a former school resource officer and detective for many, many years, cameras are really good to solve a theft. They're really good for evidence, but cameras will never stop a bullet. Visitor management. Visitor management is nothing more than a day-to-day operation tool. It's not providing insecurity whatsoever, and it's only as good as the people operating that system, and only as good as the building that supports the system. Move over into metal detectors and artificial intelligence. Metal detectors are nothing more than an alert system that are not foolproof. It doesn't answer the question, okay, I got an alert, now what do I do? The amount of resources it ties up, if you've gone to the airport, which I'm sure a lot of your viewers have, it creates a fatal funnel. It's this bottleneck of people, and it actually creates a target-rich environment. But if that alert goes off on a metal detector or artificial intelligence, are we answering, okay, what do we do now? You have the alert, we don't have the response. And all the stupid things like clear backpacks or these configurations you put on a door that are completely against fire code. It's these one-trick ponies that people are trying to throw a Band-Aid at a problem that is so much more complicated than a Band-Aid can seal that wound. It's not an answer. It's not a response. It's a good feeling we did something. That's not effective.
That's the primary problem with everything that we're touching in our culture, Jason. I mean, something bad happens and we get emotional, which is normal and not necessarily bad. And then we have some sort of response, and we're happy and we're pleased, and we appease our guilt or our shame or whatever else because we've done something. Well, that's where they end. They stop right there. Well, we passed this law. We banned this gun. We made this change. Now it'll stop. I've done something. Well, most of the time you haven't done anything, but you've told yourself you have. So now you walk off thinking the problem's handled or it's okay, and the problem hasn't been handled. These kids are no more safer today than they were the day before you took this action to have done something. I don't mean to sound inappropriate in any way. I don't, Jason Polinski, 3D Response System. I don't mean to do that, but I will tell you, I'm having a real hard time not immediately telling those people, here's a kite, go fly it, when they behave like that, because it's stupid. And since I have kids in the community school and I want them safe along with their classmates, the staff, everybody else who may be there, it's a complete and total false sense of security. And so it's, in my opinion, it's a net lowering of our situational awareness when we hang these gimmicks up and we think we're okay now. I can't stand it. I mean, I've had a belly full of it. I'm not willing to do it anymore.
I wrote an article a few years back called Wash, Rinse, and Repeat. And I wrote my thesis paper on active shooters. I've been an active shooter instructor for 20 years. I supervised our school resource officer program and was a school resource officer for over 25 years. And the wash, rinse, repeat article was basically a pattern that I saw that started about Columbine. And what it is you have a horrific event that occurs in a school and you have dead children. You have a couple days of grieving, then you have a call to action with passion from people that don't know what they're talking about, and it's based on emotion and it's based upon what just happened, and we can't let that happen again. So after Sandy Hook, it was visitor management because Adam Lanza, the way he entered that school. After Uvalde, it was single point entry because he came through a back door, and we try to fix what just happened. I guarantee you, if there's a shooting somewhere and they come through a roof, there's going to be a national outcry for roof safety. So we keep trying to fix what just happened, and that after that outcry is done, do something. They throw the minimum amount to appease parents that we're doing something. The next time, and I guarantee you, the next time there's something that happens, look at the news. I guarantee you the quote will be, your school district, ABCD, whatever it is, puts your child's safety at its utmost priority. It's every single time. They're lying. They're not doing it. And then after that uprise comes out from parents being passionate that children were hurt, it goes to a 7, 8, 30-year gun control debate. Every one of these things has turned into weaponizing the death of children to go after the Second Amendment. There's a bill in Minnesota called the SHIELD Act, and I was asked to get a letter of, not recommendation, but a endorsement from Moms Demand Action. I called the local chapter here in Minnesota. I had 2 moms come down. I gave them a tour of the system that we're installed in one of our 20 schools, walked them through the whole thing. Walking out, I said, what do you think? And their answer was, this should be in every school in the nation. And they were passionate about, like, this is the answer. I said, can you do me a favor and write a letter of endorsement on Moms Demand Action letterhead that MDA endorses this product? And they said, absolutely. They sent me the letter. I sent it off to the author of the bill, Elliot Engen, Minnesota State Rep. He submits it to the Democrats, and the Democrat, he called me and said he just dropped a nuclear bomb on the Democratic floor. They said, how did you get this? 20 minutes later, he gets a phone call from Moms Demand Action saying, we retract this letter. And he said, why? And he was told, we are neutral on this topic. We retract the letter. And kudos to him. He goes, so let me get it straight. Moms Demand Action, an organization that is built on keeping kids safe, is neutral on the bill to keep kids safe. And they just said, we retract this letter. So learn out later, Moms Demand Action is nothing more than a funding mechanism to go after the Second Amendment. That's all they do. It's fun, and they feed off of good people's intentions to donate money to help keep kids safe. But the motive is not that. And that's been the wash, rinse, and repeat since Columbine. It's nothing about keeping kids safe. That I honestly don't think we're getting pushback for our system from politicians, but every SWAT person I've walked through it, every Special Forces military person I've walked through it, every police officer I've walked through it, everybody who has 1 ounce of tacticalness in their body, when they see our system and go through some of the trainings we do with our system, the common term is, this is a game changer. This needs to be everywhere. But yet we run into this brick wall because it doesn't fit a narrative.
Okay.
Honestly, well, a true story. I'm not a political guy, but when I ran into that, I was sick to my stomach that that's actually real.
Well, you shouldn't be surprised by that. You can't tell me that. You may have been disappointed, you may have been sick, but you can't tell me that you were surprised, were you?
Shocked. I mean, stunned that an organization that portrays themselves in such a manner is full of...
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen here real quick. I want people to see 3D response systems, and that's 3dresponse.com. Why don't you walk us through with what this system is and what comprises the system? I mean, you took people that were not favorable to firearms or firearms use. I think that's a reasonable assertion, and you walked them through this live in an actual school in a true setting. And they said, this sounds great. We think everybody should have it. So help us understand what that is. Why don't you go ahead?
So it's multi-layered, and it's not a 30-second drive-by explanation. It's if you look at who are the stakeholders in these scenarios, it's the children, it's the teachers, and it's the cops. Those are the ones that are directly involved in the response to an incident. So we took Run, Hide, Fight, which is a system that I refuse to teach anymore, and we put it on steroids.
Okay.
And we also look at it from a holistic point of view. It's not just the act of, it's the before, the during, and the after. So on the before side, personally, I think mental health has kind of gotten too much focus because I've investigated over 60 active shooter threats to a school district in my career. All the ones that I've investigated, it was a child that slept through the cracks that wasn't a red flag. But still, are we putting the right people in threat assessment situations to do those assessments? School counselors are their specialty, or school psychologists, is autism and learning disabilities. It's not homicidal, suicidal kids. It's educational. Do we have the right people in those scenarios to actually do those threat assessments to, number one, help the child, number two, keep our kids safe? So it's the prevention side of it, up front with the right people in the right place at the right time. If one of those slips through the cracks, our physical component system comes into play. So, like I said, we take Run, Hide, Fight, and we put it on steroids. So how do we enhance the hide? And if you go back and you look at all the school shootings, the hide was what was in question. The building does not support it. There's no cover. So with cover, we provide cover in every single area of that school to make a place safe from a bullet. So the picture you're showing on the screen there, that's my business partner. What he's pulling out right now is a pocket door. That is actually a level 7 ballistic panel that pulls out of the wall. The whole wall behind, on the hallway side is also ballistic. We pull the sheetrock off. We put ballistic material in there. So we've given every child in that classroom a ballistically cover place that will stop a bullet. We also fortify the doors with 1,200 pounds of magnetic pressure. We have a police button that's in each schoolroom that once that button is pushed, it sends a message to 911, instant notification. No phones are needed, and that's a whole different topic of trying to use your phone while being shot at. So it activates 1,200 pounds of magnetic pressure, sends off the alert system both inside and outside the school, and sends a message to 911. We enhance the windows so they can't gain entry through a door. We have a dispatching system that's installed in typically the administrative office, where the admin staff goes into a ballistically protected room with the camera system tied into it, and they can dispatch to their staff in live time where the intruder is in that building, and then as soon as the first officer arrives in that building, they're going to dispatch that officer directly to where the suspect is. I just trained 75 police officers using the communication piece to this, and without our system, the average time for the officer to locate and eliminate the suspect was over 5 minutes. With our system, it was 40 seconds.
Wow.
So we're buying that time. We have lanyards. If you go outside and you bring your kids to the playground, you can activate your system. You don't have to run to a button. We have a suspect dice. It's called a suspect identification system, where if you go to Tennessee, if this was installed in Tennessee, there's nobody dead. If somebody comes through the visitor management system and they try to force their way through, like Sandy Hook or Tennessee, where they shoot the glass falls, they had free access to the school. They come in, they shoot the glass does not maintain its composure. They get blasted with 15 pounds of a bright yellow powder that coats them yellow and also takes away their vision, providing concealment for those on the inside of that glass.
Wow.
We give protection to the people who control the doors. All of our desks, the visitor management desks, are ballistically protected, both on top and below, depending on the situation. If you have overhead looking, we'll ballistic the top to provide them cover. But we will walk a building, and there's other like no more keys. There's been a lot of teachers that could not get their door locked. They couldn't even get the key in there to lock their door. Your fine-tuned motor skills. I've been involved in a shooting, and I've been involved in a lot of situations where I've experienced that tunnel vision, and I've experienced the loss of fine-tuned motor skills. Putting a key in a door under stress is not easy, and kids have lost their life for that. So there's no keys in our system. So it's really hard to explain verbally. It truly is a system. Part 1 works with part 2, works with part 3, and you create this system. And when everything comes together, you can have a school of 2,000 plus kids, and you can take your building back in less than 60 seconds. You're giving the power back to the teachers and the kids. They own that school with a gun until they don't want to own it anymore. We're not providing the weapons and the tools to respond to take your school back and take it back quickly. You take a target-rich environment and you make it target-less in 60 seconds. So, and then the aftermath, a lot of people don't talk about that, is when you're a school administrator or a decision maker and something happens in your building, you're going to have more resources thrown at you that you don't know what to do with. We talk about staging areas, reunification, it's a complete process. So Columbine, they planned that act for 9 months, and we're supposed to resolve it with a buzzing system. They own that building for 6 hours.
Yeah.
They didn't have tools to take it back. And the police response wasn't what it is today. Back then, the police response was perimeter and SWAT. And a typical SWAT call out takes an hour for SWAT just to show up, and we don't have that time. So our system gives them the tools to do so.
Well, that training is something that I hope that nobody experiences. But we had a guest on several episodes back. You may know Ryan Petty. He lost his daughter in Parkland, and we had a very emotional, a very trying podcast, which was very good and very valuable. And he shared with us some of the experiences that he had personally as a parent, trying to become reunified or to figure out what was going on after there was a problem. And to be honest with you, it sounded horrific. I mean, I don't mean to suggest in any way that the loss of one's child or a friend's children or whatever else wasn't, but I'm saying that people don't seem to handle those things well. And the response for something like this, like it or not, should be trained for and should be, I don't know if it's proceduralized, but laid out so that it can be handled and handled well. Handled with sensitivity and handled properly, because otherwise you're just kind of making your way through and you're scared to say and do the wrong thing. And I can see why that's a big problem. No question.
The problem is, and this has been my experience, the first district who got installed in, the superintendent is a 20-year veteran of the Army as lieutenant colonel with multiple deployments during Afghanistan and Iraq. He understands battle. He understands tactics. He's a unicorn in the leadership of schools' mindsets. A lot of these superintendents and school boards rely on hope, and hope is not a plan. A lot of these people think it won't happen here. That is not a plan. The superintendent that installed us, the lieutenant colonel, he told me, he said, if the fire code wasn't in existence, 99% of superintendents and school board would take their chance that it wouldn't happen here, that a fire won't occur.
I agree.
And that's the mindset, is they, until it happens, it's just, I hope it doesn't happen.
Yep.
And the fortunate side to that, and I say fortunate because they deserve it, Uvalde's up to $27 billion in lawsuits. They deserve to get sued.
Say that number again.
27 billion.
With a B.
Billion.
Okay.
And they deserve it. When there's systems out there that exist and you decide not to act, you are liable. You know, you could have prevented this. You're liable. And We did our first proof of concept, and there was with some people I didn't know. Unbeknownst to me, there was a federal judge from California in our group. And after we ran through the scenario, she raised her hand and said, "It's interesting. Once this system gets out there, how is anybody going to say they did everything they could? They're going to be liable. And these school leaders will take their chance." And I say this with no hesitation. Anybody who's listening to your show right now, if you're a school leader and your number one priority is not safety of your children, please find a different job.
Hmm.
I don't care about your football field. I don't care about your swimming pool. I care about the kids' safety. Everything that is a want comes after a need, and a need is keeping our kids safe.
Well, every parent assumes, Jason, that when we drop the kids off, that they're safe there, or we wouldn't do it. Well, I don't know parents that take their kids somewhere where they are likely to be hurt, maimed, or killed. They don't do that. I mean,
No.
Nobody does that.
I did it for 20 years with my children. Drop them off at a school, and I'm assuming they're going to be safe. And the reality is, after working in a school and the number of active shooter threats I've investigated in my life, it's a false sense of security. If somebody bad is out there in this world and they want to do bad things, I've had the not pleasure of sitting across individuals that have murdered people that have shown absolutely no remorse whatsoever, and you're looking into evil, and they truly are evil people. No sense of human compassion. They just don't care. And it's an eerie feeling. Chavez Nelson, one of the guys who killed two people that I sat across the table from him, actually made my skin crawl. I was looking at the devil, and he did not care. I actually thought, I'm going to be fighting my way out of this room here. And evil does exist. There are evil people. And until we understand that if somebody wants to hurt somebody, they're going to hurt somebody. And no amount of prevention or mental health is going to prevent true evil people. It does exist.
We've had Ed Monk. You may know of him. We've had him in several times to talk with people at IFC. We've had him give seminars that we've offered free to the public for schools and churches and businesses, that kind of thing. And he has some particularly effective slides that basically break it down to time and math. Once something bad happens, how long are you going to let it go on before it's curtailed? And people don't want to think like that at all. It hurts them. It bothers them. And I understand. I'm an empathetic person, Jason. I don't prefer ordinarily for people to embrace the ugly nature of the evil that you just spoke about. But I'm sorry. I apologize. I love people enough. I want them to know I don't wish this for you, but you're going to have to think about it whether you like it or not. Because if it does happen, and it just may, because it happens to other people, if it happens, then your question is answered. Okay, it's happened now. I didn't think it was, but it has. So the next obvious question is how long is it going to go on? Are they going to have, like you said, 6 hours of time to kill and destroy and maim? Or are they going to have 60 seconds? Are they going to have 10 seconds? Are they going to have 6 minutes? We want to get this number down. I don't like talking about it like this, but we have to. If something bad is going to happen, and it does, we got to get this number down to the lowest possible number available to hurt the fewest number of people available.
And that's kind of our motto is minimize loss of life. We fully understand that you cannot prevent this because evil does exist and evil things do happen in this world, but you can minimize loss of life. They hold the advantage of the element of surprise. 9 days out of the week. If somebody wants to do evil, people just can't look at somebody and say, this guy's going to kill people. They have to make an act. But once that act is made, whether it's brandishing something or firing a gun or pulling out a knife, once that act of evil is observed, take control of the situation. And we're not giving the tools to the people to take control of the situation. Mm-hmm. So you can have one shot fired. After that one shot and people are aware, how do you take your school back and take a target-rich environment all of a sudden it's targetless and they have nobody to hurt because they have the tools to respond. And that's what we've done essentially. It's a very tactical approach to a horrific event in a building with people that can't defend themselves.
Okay. Okay, that helps, because when you started to describe this system, now I'll admit, in preparation for this, I went and watched some of the videos and I had a fair idea what was going on here, how it was going to go on. But as you just started to describe this, and I think the timing was good on when I opened up the share screen and you were showing your business partner pulling this ballistic wall, if you will, out on the fly. I was thinking, as you said that, how are you going to turn a school into 1/4 of its area or 1/3 of its area into essentially safe rooms? Because that's what you'd need in order to, if you could get them in there fast enough and get the doors closed, that's what you need to keep yourself out of harm's way. And you're showing us we're turning what exists in the school into basically safe rooms, where we're solidifying them or able to solidify them in the ways that make the kids protected. Because you're right, there just aren't hiding spaces that are fortified that exists in schools today. I don't know if there ever could be. I don't know how you'd even design or do that. So this is really interesting stuff. So you've put together, as you said, tactics combined with the strategy to prepare and deploy this. What else do we need to know and understand here? What are we missing?
I think there needs to be a paradigm shift in mindset on, again, I'll go back to the definition. When you look at fire suppression systems, they're mandated by law. And if you go back in history, the leading cause of death to children in schools across this nation in the 1900s was fires.
Yep.
There was the first school shooting, however, was in the late 1700s, and this is not a new phenomenon. And people say, I can't believe it's come to this, and I say, I can't believe we haven't addressed it yet. We've addressed everything else but this.
Yeah.
But with the fire system, the fire code was written in the early 1900s and was finalized in the 1920s and sat on a desk until 1958. My fear is history is going to repeat itself, and it's going to take 95 kids to die, much like it did in 1958 at Our Lady of the Angel Schools in Chicago, where 95 kids died from a fire. After that fire, they said enough's enough, and they implemented the fire code. It started in Chicago, and it branched across the nation. Now it's law. In fact, insurance will not cover you if you don't have a fire suppression system in, because insurance companies were losing their ass to fire deaths in the 1900s. Since the fire code has been implemented, there's not been one loss of life to a child in our schools in this nation. And if you look at what a fire suppression system is, or you look at what the fire code is, it's a multi-layered system, much like ours, that no matter where a fire starts, it provides the tools to put out or contain the fire, starts the fire department faster, and you cannot argue the results of not one child losing their life since the fire code's been implemented. Why isn't there a police code? Why the history shows that mindset and that type of system was so effective to save lives. It completely ended loss of life. And when we got done creating our system, and again, my partner is a SWAT guy. I'm a former school cop, active shooter instructor, narcotics officer. We brought in educators and firefighters. Like we stepped back from a 30,000 foot view and said, we just created a fire system for a different threat. It's the same thing. No matter where the gun is pulled, no matter where the fire starts, we're looking at the building as a whole, not the front vestibule, not the back door, because you can't predict where it's going to start. And what do the kids need to live? How do we give these people the tools to take your school back, no matter where it starts? And again, we focus on what just happened. We're trying to throw a peanut at a puzzle. You know, it's like, just put the puzzle together.
Yeah.
We're not looking at this from the right lens. And I walk through buildings with architects, and they're looking at what type of brick is put in the wall, or this angle's off. And when I walk through a building, I'm looking at where's my cover. You know, and that's just my whole life. Based on that, I'll walk into your house and I'll look around going, where's my point of exit and where's cover?
Yeah.
I walk through a school, there is no cover. Your sheetrock wall is not going to stop a threat. Parkland, most of his rounds went through doors.
Yep.
They were concealed, they weren't covered. So we need to define what school safety is, much like a fire system is defined. Everybody knows what a fire suppression system is. Everybody has an opinion on what school safety is when it comes to gun violence in schools. And to be honest with you, I don't care if you're the hardest 2A supporter in the world, or if you're a let's ban all guns. Our system takes that out of the conversation. It doesn't matter. Give the kids the tools. I I said that in my testimony when I was speaking. Like, I'm a 2A guy. I've been carrying a gun on my hip for 30 years. I I own guns. I'm a 2A guy, but let's put the focus rather than on a tool, and let's put the focus on the kids and how can we give them the tools to respond. If you want a gun, carry a gun, but is the good gun going to be where the bad gun is when it's needed most? And the answer is no, it's not. So in that meantime, until a good gun gets there, what tools have we given them to live that 30 seconds to 2 minutes of life? We're not giving them anything.
I think that you're probably right about that. I'll be very frank with you. I'll be very honest. And I appreciate your candor. So thank you for very much for this, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the nation has a gun-free school zone act. So you can't just carry guns in school unless there is something that allows you to do that, like a permit from your state or whatever else would qualify as an exemption to that. Okay. So I'm thinking to myself, if people put in place something the way that 3D Response Systems has, and then they allowed the carry with a permit of anybody in the school that wanted to, then that would be staff, parents, whatever else. I'm not sure how you could do any more than that. I don't know how you possibly could, because now you've got components in place for immediate communication. You've got something in place for immediate protection. And you'd like to think, or you'd hope, that whatever threat was there could be negated as quickly as humanly possible by having more good guys with guns in proximity. I don't know what else you're going to do, really. But as I think about this, if I take one step back and I say, okay, how do we have people or encourage people or challenge them to have the kinds of conversations that we're talking about having? I think ultimately that's the true problem. People don't want to talk about this. It's icky, man. They don't want anything to do with it, Jason. They don't.
No, it's sad because sometimes reality just slap you up against the side of the head until you actually think about reality. And watching it on TV isn't reality. It's again, I'll go back to the shooting I was in. It's one thing to hear bullets flying by your head, another thing to watch it on TV. It's real, and it doesn't get any realer than that. If teachers want to carry, I don't care. I mean, have at it. It's not, to me, the conversation. There's so much passion behind it on both sides, and the reality of it is, it's not part of the solution as a whole, because if Timmy pulls out a gun in a hallway outside of the chemistry class and starts firing rounds, you still have to respond, whether that response is from somebody in a squad car driving to it or whether it's somebody in the building with a gun. You still have that moment in time where the kids don't have any tools. So in my ideal world, just so you know, I'm not a fan of arming teachers, and I think ask the teachers if they want to, but there's so much more that goes into that concept, and so much, the liability alone on them as citizens is putting them in a spot where they could lose their livelihood. Every lead that comes out of that barrel, they're responsible for. It's a very tough situation to put these teachers in. Law enforcement has something called qualified immunity. If I'm working in the scope of my duties and I shoot somebody under qualified immunity, they cannot go after me personally. I'm not going to lose my house. They can go after the place I work. I'm all for conceal and carry, but if you're gonna brandish that weapon and use it, you better be spot on, and you better be dead right and justified with every time you pull that trigger.
I agree with that.
The other thing too with it is, if you think about it, If you're a police officer, we're also trained in first responder. So if I shoot somebody, I then am required by law to provide them first aid.
Yeah.
We also have to go up and down something called a use of force continuum, where all of a sudden a situation can present itself as deadly force, and deadly force doesn't exist anymore, and now you're in a less lethal. Are we going to provide tasers or some tools for them to be able to de-escalate when needed
Yeah.
because all of a sudden deadly force isn't there?
Yeah.
So it's a long list of things. Gun retention is probably. I had a Marine was my skills instructor for defensive tactics, and the first thing he told me, every time you go to a call, there's a gun there and it's yours. Don't lose it. And
Yeah.
we did ground fighting with one hand to keep our gun in our holster for months, and it's not easy to do. So I think it's a really simple comment people make that let's arm teachers without a lot of thought behind it. Again, I'm not against it. I just want it done right. And
Yeah.
on
There
top
are
of that,
pitfalls. Yeah.
on top of that, is the good gun going to be where the bad gun is? You know, we're still missing that gap, and the whole point here. That's why I say I don't care if you want to carry in school. I don't care if you don't want to carry in school. I want the kids to have the tools.
Yeah.
Let's give the kids the tools.
I understand. Okay. Well, I'm obligated as somebody who is in my position and believes what I believe to push back on some of this, because I haven't been able to witness a time outside of schools where people are routinely shooting up crowds or whatever else by accident when they're defending themselves. That I haven't been able to find any place where that's happening in high frequency. So, but I agree, if you're going to take the responsibility of carrying a firearm, you need to do it thoroughly and do it well. And I wouldn't advocate anybody, teacher or not, doing that if they weren't fully prepared. And like you said, I have people, who come up to me as a Christian, as a men's ministry leader, and they're like, how can you advocate for carrying a weapon and killing people? I'm like, well, I don't do that. I advocate for stopping a threat. And then I immediately have to be prepared to move into life-saving mode and offer chest compressions, tourniquets, whatever it is that I can do to stop this life from expiring. That's the responsibility that most people that I know take when they carry. So it has requirements. There are responsibilities associated with doing that, and it's not to be taken lightly. No question. You don't just go out and say, well, you got your teacher's certificate, here's a gun. That's not how it works.
Correct. And that's where I think the topic of school safety kind of goes off the rail a little bit, that it gets sucked into the gun conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, I don't care if you're anti-gun or pro-gun. I care about keeping kids safe. And my ideal world is our system with a school resource officer who's licensed and trained and has qualified immunity to respond. They're in the building. That is, in my eyes, the best response you can do. If there's teachers that want to carry, have at it. I mean, I've seen cops who are trained that have gone code black. I mean, you don't know. And the other thing, too, you don't know how you're going to physically respond. Can you actually do this when you hear a 40 cal fly by your head? What is your physical response? Can you do it? My son's active duty Marine, and there's Marines that freeze up because it's just a human response that you've never experienced, and you're going to go into a little bit of shock. Can you actually respond, or can you freeze? So it's not the topic of, hey, let's arm the teachers, in my eyes, is very short-minded.
Yeah.
It's not giving the kids the tools. So carry guns if you want, but I want to give the kids the tools.
I follow. I understand. Thank you for that. Okay, so wrapping up, what is it that we need to know? How can we get in touch with you? How can we challenge people to have this conversation that will lead to possibilities or outcomes that include 3D response systems? I want you to tell us how we start that conversation, because that's vital.
So I kind of call it my call to action is to parents. I've spoken to a lot of public school superintendents and school boards, and I run into this brick wall that they're smarter than me and they know what needs to be done. And that's fine. You can have your opinion. If you go back to 2020, and I was a lieutenant. I just retired yesterday, actually. as a lieutenant in a suburb of Minneapolis, and during the George Floyd riots, Black Lives Matter was infiltrating our school boards with whatever message, it doesn't matter. But they were a very loud, squeaky wheel, and they were intimidating, and they got their way in Minnesota. I don't see that passion from the silent majority parents about keeping our kids safe, and I question, why aren't parents going to their school board like we saw during the Black Lives Matter movement and being that vocal? Why aren't they going to the school board and saying, what are you doing to keep my kids safe? And then more importantly, can you define what safety is? How is your visitor management system going to protect my child? Don't just let them say we got cameras. Challenge them. How is a camera going to stop a bullet? What are you doing to protect my child? And I want a clear, defined definition of it. I guarantee they won't be able to answer it. And if you go and you have these discussions with your school board and you come in with a set of knowledge and you come in with some research on what actually cover, concealment, and communication is, that's what the military lives off of. That's what law enforcement lives off of. An interesting stat I came across, I train force on force, which is simunitions with cops. If you are involved in an officer-involved shooting and you have cover, your chance of survival is over 85%. If you're in that same scenario without cover, your chance of survival is 17%.
Wow.
We're sending our kids to school at a 17% chance of survival if a bad guy shows up. That's the information you need to challenge your school board.
Okay.
They will try to tell you that they know more than you. Walk in with some facts. Ask them, are you providing cover, concealment, and communication to my kids when they need it the most? Because your camera ain't going to do that. So I really hope. We started this company grassroots. We're a couple cops, a firefighter, and an educator. And we took our experience and we said, this is how we save lives, based upon real life experience and tactics, and a response that will actually effectively give them the ability to take their school back. Your visitor management system ain't going to do that. Your buzzing system ain't going to do that. Your metal detector ain't going to do that. So go to your school board, ask them to define what safety is. I'd love to hear their definition, and then have the wherewithal with facts and knowledge to say that's not going to provide cover for my child. You can get a hold of me through 3dresponse.com. There's a contact us post on there. I'm more than willing. I've been down to your state a couple times. In fact, talk about wash, rinse, and repeat. Last year, I think it was you guys had a school shooting that made a brief stint on the news, and then, sadly, there was not many children hurt or dead, and it kind of went off of the radar. But I was told by the author of the SHIELD Act that I might have to go down to the governor's office for an emergency session about the SHIELD Act in Iowa, and it just kind of disappeared. And I don't know why, but it was reactive. And we need to stop waiting for something to happen and finally get in front of this. Be prepared.
Well, would you like to know, just for your edification, what happened after that horrific incident not far from Des Moines out in Perry?
Yeah,
the Iowa legislature was convening. Our session lasts typically from January through April. They convened and they had a head of steam. They didn't want anything bad to happen. They wanted to do something. And they put in place a method to allow staff to arm themselves, to be trained up. And they made the training and the, how do I put this? They made the prerequisites and training so stringent. I question whether you could test through special forces with it. But anyway, they have done that, and not a single person has moved forward to attain or retain that special permittance, because it was a professional permit essentially. Not a single person I was been able to do that. So they put in place so many here to's and therefores and whatever else that it was completely
essentially they made an ineffective decision.
Completely and totally. And we tried, believe me, the entire time. Iowa Firearms Coalition and others were like, hold on a minute. I think you're going overboard here, or you're going overboard there. We've left out key components. Let's stop. And everybody's like, listen, we've got a head of steam. We need to do this and get it on the books. And then we'll make tweaks. Okay, well, that can work, but I don't know if this is the best way to go. I'll be honest with you. I feel bad about it personally. I should have been very loud. I was not loud enough. I should have said, wait a minute. I understand that you're passionate and you love children. You love educators. You don't want to see kids and educators, anybody hurt. I know that. But I don't think that this is the best thing that we should be doing or the best thing we can do. I wasn't loud enough about it. I feel absolutely horrific about it. That's a personal failure of mine. Many people at IFC would probably join me in that assertion. So it didn't go well, ultimately.
I think the other problem is there wasn't enough thought put into it. It was a knee-jerk reaction, and it goes back to that wash, rinse, repeat. Here's an idea. I'm not saying this to make anybody bad, but arming teachers is a knee-jerk reaction. It's not a well thought out thing. It's separate from what needs to be done. And if we actually look at the topic of a school shooting from a holistic point of view, from the prevention to the act to the aftermath, and what is the best way to effectively protect these children? Again, I'll go back to is the good gun going to be where the bad gun is? And you got to look at who are the stakeholders. It's the teachers and the kids. What tools are we giving the teachers and the kids if a gun is pulled out in chemistry class? They own that space until they decide it's done. Now, if a good gun's there, now we got a battle.
Yeah.
But across the hallway, what tools have we given them? And it's much deeper than any one trick pony can resolve. I think a gun in a school is a part of the solution. It's not the solution.
Right.
I have to think about it bigger.
I agree. And the other thing about it is, I think the reason that there are so many advocates for each aspect of the things that we're talking about here is because they believe in it, they see it. And oh, by the way, none of this happens overnight. It takes time. Yes. And so there's no reason to wait on these conversations, especially if that's really what's happening, is a true conversation and exchange of ideas.
And quite frankly, get the right minds in that conversation. You need people like myself and you. You need we brought in people to create the system. We brought in stakeholders, that lifelong educators, lifelong police officers, lifelong firefighters, military. I mean, we brought in minds that we thought could contribute to how do we fix this. Most of my pushback comes from, for lack of a better term, uneducated and unexperienced human beings that don't know what they're talking about. If you asked me, hey, can you do my accounting? I would laugh at you and say, I have no freaking clue how to even add, let alone do accounting. But if you ask me, hey, can we talk about tactics? It's been my life for 30 years. Let's have a conversation. I know something about that. And everybody has an opinion on this. Everybody is a subject matter expert, but yet nobody can define how do we fix it.
Yes. Okay. Well, that brings us full circle then, because I ask you specifically in closing or for this podcast, what can people do in order to start the conversation that is 100% necessary in order to lead us towards logical outcomes, like you say, giving people the tools to protect themselves? And you said to me, Michael, we need to go to the school boards and say, what are you doing to keep my child safe? And they may or may not answer. And regardless of if they do, help me understand what you think safety means. Define safety for me. Those are the things that Jason Polinski with 3D Response System, that's 3dresponsesystem.com, are asking us to do to start these vital conversations that we absolutely have to have. Did I miss it? Miss the mark, or should we add to that?
No, that's spot on. Don't just be knee-jerk. Some of the worst consequences have come from the best intentions. And an intention isn't always necessarily a response. And before you start throwing things against a wall, if you're a school board member, if you're a superintendent, I asked that superintendent, how many classes did you take for your doctor's degree on keeping kids safe? He said 0. But yet we have to listen to you. You're not in your lane on this topic. So shut up.
Yes.
You know, don't
Yes.
educate yourself. Challenge your educational leaders. And if you're an educational leader and keeping your kids safe isn't your number one priority, would you please go find a job driving a bus or something, because you're in the wrong spot, because my kids' lives depend on you.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Organize, get to your school board meetings, ask, and not just even the meetings, but when you see these people, a lot of folks are out in the community. You'll run into them at the grocery store, at the park. We're coming up on July 4th and parades. Say, oh, by the way, I meant to ask you, what's the best safety aspect in school? Or how are you keeping my kids safe? How do you define safety so that I can better understand? Tell it to me so that I can tell it to my third grader. Explain that, because I need to know that. Let's start
Michael,
with those questions, people.
I'll end with this, and it's a very eye-opening thing that happened. So our first school we got installed in was Christian Heritage Academy. Small school, 200 kids. And I went and presented to a school board in a Christian setting, and the board actually cared about their kids. When I go to public schools, the board cares about, I don't really know if I don't feel it from them like I did with a private school. And I gave them the presentation, broke down all the layers of our system, and their comment was, how do we not do this? They raised the money in about 5 weeks, and we were completed in about 8 weeks. So they went from run, hide, fight was their response to a multi-layered system to provide kids the tools to respond. Their waiting list has shot up 140% because each time parents will come, and it's an $8,000 a year school. So the parents would ask, what are you doing? What are you doing to keep my kids safe? Well, it went to, we teach run, hide, fight. That transferred into a 45-minute walkthrough of 9 different layers that they've installed in their building to take this school back. Comprehensive, and the parents were enthralled, like, oh my God, this is safe. Their waiting list is up 140%. Parents want to get their kids in there because they took it seriously. And that's the example, I think, if you go to your public school board or your superintendent, is like, what are you doing for safety? If their response is visitor management and run, hide, fight, that is not safety. That is checking a box because the state said you had to do it. That is not safety.
Yep, that's hope and pray, and that doesn't always work.
Correct. So I'll end there, but that's the proof is in the pudding. When your waiting list goes up after you get a multi-layered system installed, 140%, that's proof that parents want their kids safe.
Agreed. Jason Polinski with 3D Response Systems. Thank you for taking some time. Everybody go to 3dresponse.com. If you're enjoying these podcasts, reach out to us at IFC and let us know if you've got a guest you'd like to hear from. If we need to bring the guest back on you already heard from, with new questions, all that kind of thing, let us know. As always, we appreciate your membership. That's the only way that this works. We work hard for your pennies. Go to our site, iowafc.org, and check out the trusted partners to find out just how much value added there is in a membership beyond joining us based on sheer principle, which you should. Again, Jason with 3D Response Systems, 3dresponsesystem.com. I appreciate the time today. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.